My name's Breanna Grieves, and I'm going to be doing an informative speech on my favorite author, Stephen King. He's a masterful storyteller. As many do know, he's critically acclaimed to be one of the best horror authors ever, including his movie adaptations. So to start off, I'm going to do an introduction on him. So when he was young, he was very poor, so he didn't have much to bring up. He was a laundry worker in his teen years and didn't have much to go off of, and he married young with his wife Tabitha. When he was 5 years old, he witnessed his friend get hit by a truck, and everybody thinks that he got his vivid imagination from that, even though he doesn't have recollection of what did happen. I'm going to talk about his 3 best-selling novels, which is Carrie, The Shining, and Pet Sematary. So the first is Carrie, and described in an interview by Peter Paracos in 2018. It's based off 2 high school girls that he went to school with, one being very bullied for wearing the same clothes every single day, and then another girl that had a very religious mother, and she had a giant crucifix above her living room couch. He combined the 2 characters into his fictional character, Carrie White, and then would develop the novel later. The telekinesis idea in the book was just based off of children hitting adolescence, like a man hitting puberty or a woman getting her period would start like some powers, making them stronger than were before. So then he just combined them all into Carrie White. So in 1974, in April, that's when he developed the novel and he released it. Didn't think it was going to be that successful, but it ended up being one of his best-selling ever, and which kickstarted his whole entire career. The next book is The Shining, and it's based off of a night he spent at the Stanley Hotel in Colorado in September of 1974, which is the same year that he did Carrie. Basically, he had a nightmare that night, which is described in the interview by Carly Hoke in 2020, where his 3-year-old child was running through the corridors of the hotel they were staying at and would look behind him, screaming, scared because a fire hose was chasing him. So he woke up in a cold sweat and was terrified by the nightmare he had and just jotted down the idea for himself and then eventually wrote the novel about it. And he actually depicted himself in the novel as well. Jack Nicholson is the father in the novel, and he depicted him with bad case of alcoholism. And he wanted to stress the importance of like knowing the dangers of alcoholism, so he portrayed that in himself because he did struggle with alcoholism himself as well. And then the last one is Pet Sematary. Can you pan around?
That was nice.
Thank you. Okay, so Pet Sematary was inspired by his daughter's cat Smucky being hit by a truck in a truck route. So he ended up having to bury the cat and then explaining to his daughter what had happened to the cat and where he buried it. And so he developed this idea 3 days after the burial of like the cat coming back as like a horrific version of itself, like it's still alive but not the same cat that it once was. And he expressed that idea to his friends and family, and he was terrified of that idea himself. His friends and family absolutely hated it, so he actually shoved it under the rug for quite some time because he didn't want to deal with it, he didn't like it, and then his friends hated it as well. Then he moved and rented a house in nearby Orrington, and that's when he developed the idea because he lived by a truck route where a bunch of cats and dogs would unfortunately lose their lives to. And so the local children of the area that he lived in made a pet cemetery behind his house. So in his backyard, there was a whole burial ground of pets that died on that route, and that fully inspired his idea to complete the novel and then release it. So Stephen King has made like countless novels, including ones that a lot of people don't even know the names of, but he wrote many best-selling novels. He holds the record of the best-selling novels that a person can ever have, and I personally recommend It, which is about Pennywise. I recommend the book It and the original series of It. because it's actually pretty terrifying compared to the newer one. I personally prefer that one, and The Shining, because the whole idea of like built up on fear of alcoholism and then dealing with parents like that is pretty hard too, so I enjoy that book as well.
All right, now you got to show us all again.
Yeah.